That shooting is just the latest tragedy for a nation that sees these horrors almost daily.
It's too much. But here in Connecticut, advocacy groups and Sandy Hook parents are sharing their thoughts and reacting, pushing for more.
All right, Channel 3 Eyewitness News reporter Olivia Schuler has local reaction to this devastating shooting in Nashville. Olivia?
Hey, Nicole, good morning. Well, parents dropped their child off of that school in Nashville, unknowing to what would happen just a few hours later. Now in Connecticut, there's some families that know what that feels like personally. We spoke to former Sandy Hook parents and students who say this is happening all too often.
Scarlett Lewis's son Jesse was killed at 6 years old at the hands of gun violence at Sandy Hook. Lewis says mass shootings should never happen, but they are frequently. 11 years later, after the devastation in Newtown, and in this year alone, the Gun Violence Archive reports 129 mass shootings just in 2023. Former Sandy Hook student Jordan Gomez says she believes mass shootings can be suppressed in part by banning assault weapons on a federal level.
We need to stop beating around the bush and pretending that the assault weapons ban in particular, which has been an incredibly controversial piece of legislation in the past, would not be extremely effective in curbing this issue.
Gomez says we also need to take a deeper look at mental health. She says people need to look into what pain is causing people's emotions to escalate and perform such brutal attacks.
Some lawmakers are now calling on massive changes when it comes to assault weapons. Senator Chris Murphy put out a tweet yesterday saying that in 1994, when assault weapons were first banned, there was a massive drop in mass shootings. When that ban expired, mass shootings skyrocketed back up. Reporting live in Hartford, Olivia Schuler, Channel 3 Eyewitness News.
All right, thanks, Olivia. Now at 6.